Good evening, I'm Christopher Schmidt, and I'm broadcasting to you live here from CCTV. The median rent for a three-bedroom apartment in Cambridge today is $3,600, and this is Renters Matter. You can hit me up on Twitter at Renters Show. That's Renters Show on Twitter if you want to send me a message during the show and let me know what you think. But ignoring that, here's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about local politics from a renter's perspective. Now, this is something that I've been participating in local politics for the past 6 months, and what I have learned is that local politics is dominated not by renters, despite the fact that 65% of Cambridge is renters. They do not dominate local politics. Now, there's a little bit of reasons why you would expect this, is because, renters tend to be younger, they tend to be less wealthy, they tend to have a little bit less free time on their hands than homeowners who are retired, who live in Cambridge, have lived here for many years, and they have more time to participate in these things. But what I have found is what this means is that the perspectives of renters in local politics are often being ignored. So this is a chance to get back a little bit at that and look a little bit at what rent looks like for someone who's been here for a long time. Now, I moved to Cambridge in 2005. I have lived in Cambridgeport for all 14 of those years that I have lived here in Cambridge. I've had two children grow up through the Cambridge public school system, and I am happy to be here in Cambridge, always have been and want to stay. But it gets harder every year. It gets harder every year as the rent goes up again and again and again, as we all know and have seen throughout this city. That we know there's a housing crisis here. We know it's difficult for people to afford to live. We know it's difficult for people to afford to find a home and to keep it once they do find it. And I think the city really needs to be looking at that and addressing that, not just in affordable housing, not just for our lowest income residents, for all the residents of Cambridge, because the rent is too damn high was almost a thing that we all recognized in New York from the rent is too damn high party back in 2005. But now we're seeing it here in Cambridge. We've seen it in Silicon Valley. We've seen it all over the country as rent has gone up in these urban areas, and we really need to be thinking about that. So how high is the rent in Cambridge? As I said at the beginning of the show, the median rent for a three-bedroom apartment right now is $3,600 a month. That's $1,200 per bedroom, but of course it doesn't stop there because it's not just three bedrooms that are the problem here, right? If we look at the median cost of a one-bedroom rental in Cambridge, one bedroom, the median cost of a one-bedroom rental in Cambridge right now, $2,300. $2,400 earlier this month, but right now $2,300. I just looked on Zillow earlier today, and what I found is that if you look through the listings on Zillow, throw out a few that are just actually rentals of a room in a larger apartment, and look at one-bedroom rentals, you're looking at $2,300 to $2,400 a month. Yeah, there's not a lot out there. So if you think about the median income that someone makes in Cambridge, one thing you might be saying is like, well, sure, but Cambridge people, I don't know, maybe they make more money. I don't know. So overall, the median rent in Cambridge, that means people who make in the middle, which includes all the tech workers who make a lot of money and all of the students who make very little money. If you look at the single person in the middle, one person household, their average income is $79,000. Now, if they were going to be looking at an apartment to be affordable, that is affordable within their price range, they would have to find something that was less than $2,000 a month, including utilities. Now I'm going to take you on a little bit of a trip here and look for something in Cambridge that can meet this goal. All right, so we can find some apartments here. We've limited ourselves to just $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month, as if this is somehow just $2,000 a month. Tell that to the grad student making $45,000. Tell that to someone who's out there who can't afford to pay for these things. Okay, just $2,000 a month. That means you're paying $24,000 a year. And these are the options that you have here, right? And so we can look and see that a lot of these options, it's a little bit dubious whether these things exist. This is a 0-bedroom, 1.0 bath. So this is actually not a one-bedroom apartment. This is a studio apartment. So we can take a step back here, and we can say we'll look for one-bedroom apartments. All right, $1,800 a month. This is where we see the rubber hit the road. So this was posted 7 hours ago, and we can see this looks like a perfectly decent apartment. One bedroom, one bathroom apartment in a 3-family. This is a nice place. But if you look back more than about a week, you'll find there's only 13 of these results. All right, so there's only 13 of these results entirely in the city of Cambridge. Now, the city of Cambridge has about 50% of the population of Cambridge is below the age of 35. All right, so there's 120,000 people who live in Cambridge, and there's 60,000 people below the age of 35. A large number of them students, and they're going to be looking for something. They've just graduated from MIT. They're moving to Cambridge because they got a job working for one of the companies here. Whether it's tech or biotech or anything else like that, and they're looking for some place to live. They want to live, maybe on their own, but realistically, if they come out here, they're going to be making probably less than the median income. Keep in mind that includes all the people who've been working here for their entire lives, making above that median income. So they're probably making $65,000 a year if they got employed at a good high-paying tech job. Now, if they're working for a nonprofit, they could be making $35,000 a year. They could be making less than that. One of the people who's running for city council who works as a teacher, he makes $22,000 a year. $22,000 a year, all right? So if we do the math on that, what that means is that according to the calculations that people use in order to figure out what people should pay, then he should pay no more than $7,000 a year on his housing. $7,000 a year divided by 12 is just about $600 a month. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm looking here, and I don't see a lot of apartments that are available for $600 a month. In fact, if we look at the lowest payment that you can make for a one-bedroom apartment in Cambridge right now, $1,550 is what this says. Now, this looks like a pretty nice place, but there's a slight problem with this. Is that this is not actually a one-bedroom apartment. This is, again, one bedroom in a three-bedroom apartment, or maybe a four-bedroom apartment. This is one of the bedrooms on the second floor, which includes a shared bathroom space inside this three-bedroom house. Okay, so when we look at the cheapest one-bedroom apartment available in Cambridge right now, it isn't. And this is what you'll find as you look for apartments, is that you have to figure out, do these places actually exist? Are they real? Are they fake listings in order to get someone seen? These are all things that you have to answer as a renter when you're renting in Cambridge. Now, the reason that you have these problems, the reason that you have scammy listings, the reason that you have these things listed for low amounts of rent as if they're a one-bedroom place is because there just aren't enough apartments. There just aren't enough apartments. If you look around the country at places where, people are renting apartments, I was talking to somebody who just moved to Cambridge. He's a new worker here in Cambridge, got a job, moved to Cambridge, and he said to me, I was shocked. I was shocked because not only did I have to pay my first month's rent, my last month's rent, my security fee, I also had to pay a broker fee. So in order to move into a place, I've got to pay $1,600 a month is the lowest price one bedroom on this thing. In order to move into an apartment, I need to have $6,400 saved up. And that is before any cost of moving. That is before moving boxes. That is before anything else that you might be looking for. You can't have any of that. You got to have $6,400 a month, and you got to be ready to write a check on that day most of the time, especially if you're moving on September 1st, because that's the only way you get the apartment. If you don't write that check that day, right then, you're not going to get that apartment. Someone else is going to come and swoop in and get that apartment. I have been to open houses. I have been to all types of different apartment listings. And let me tell you, renting in this town is a nightmare. It's a nightmare experience. There was an article in the Boston Globe the other day, and it talked about how hard he had to look for apartments and how he had gone down dangerous stairwells and gotten trapped in back alleys and tried to buy things and found out that he couldn't. All of these things are things that he had to deal with in order to try and rent an apartment. And that's just because there just aren't enough apartments. Where my friend who just recently got a job here, he just got a apartment, and where he had moved from, he didn't have to pay first, last security and a broker fee. He didn't even have to pay the first month's rent. Not like up front. He didn't have to pay it at all. Because in order to get him to sign a lease, the apartment actually said, oh, great, we'll pay your first month's rent. We appreciate you coming in and leasing here. And that's what happens when rental supply is high, is that people have to try and entice clients to come and rent from them. And so they'll do that. But that doesn't happen when you come to the Cambridge market. No. Now, if you're talking about being a single person living here, okay, maybe that's okay. You got a tech job, you're making $60,000, $70,000 a year. You can find a way to make that work. That's fine. But if you're talking about being a family, if you're talking about a family that's moving here, all right? So I'm a family man. I've been married for a few years. 12 years now. Sorry, I have to do the math on that. Been married for 12 years. I got married here in Cambridge at First Parish Church in Harvard Square. And I've been married for 12 years. We've got 2 kids. My 2 daughters are 21 and 18 now. All right. So we've been living in Cambridge with 2 kids for this entire time. All right. So in order to get an apartment here, right, we've got 2 kids. We need 2 bedrooms. Now, granted, my elder daughter has moved out and is no longer with us. But we'll go back a year and say we had to have 2 bedrooms for the kids. because realistically, a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old don't want to share a bedroom. And a bedroom for me, too, is very nice, right? Okay, so great. We wanted to have a 3-bedroom apartment. Now, a 3-bedroom apartment, in order to afford that 3-bedroom apartment, $3,600 a month, remember, if we do $3,600 a month, and we take that times 3.3, and we take that times 12, the amount of money that you have to be making to afford a 3-bedroom apartment in Cambridge is $150,000 a year. That is how much it costs. And that doesn't actually even include the utility costs, which, if you've ever lived in an older house in Cambridge, you know that electricity, heat, hot water, all these things add up, and you end up paying a fair amount of money. Now, I'm not living in a big apartment. I've got a very nice apartment I'm very happy with. Been there for 5 years now. Very happy with it. And that apartment costs a lot of money. Now, I'm lucky enough that I can afford to do that. I can afford to stay here, and that's great. But as that rent has creeped up and up and up, what we have done is we have caused all the people who don't make $150,000 a year, who don't feel like they can do that, are forced to move out. They're forced to move out to the suburbs. They're forced to move out to, areas that are farther away. They're forced to make trade-offs of their time in commuting. They're forced to make trade-offs in their transportation so they can no longer take the T. They have to buy cars. They have to do all these other things so that they can afford to raise a family in the Boston area. And so I've said for a long time that what happens when my friends who reach a certain age are about to have kids is they move. They move to Waltham, they move to Weymouth, they move to other places that start with W, and other towns as well. They move to Seattle, they move to Austin, they move to Houston, they move to other parts of the country where housing is less. Costs less. Not housing is less. Housing costs less. Housing costs less in other towns. Now, part of that is that Cambridge has become a super desirable place to be because we have successfully built ourselves its huge ecosystem of technology, of biotech, of becoming a desirable city, and not just Cambridge, but Boston and the whole region that we have created and moved ourselves out of a post-industrial world into a high-tech world, combined with the major draw of our universities, means that employers want to be here, and when employers want to be here, employees want to be here, and realistically, tech companies can afford to pay enough salary to price people out, and they do. They price people out because they want their workers to come here. Now, they're not saying, I'm going to kick you out, Mr. Person who's been here for 15 years. They're not saying to their workers, please go find an apartment in Cambridge and, be snappy about it. What they're doing is that they're hiring people. They're hiring people to work in Cambridge. They're hiring people to come into our city and work in our city. And of course, if you work in Cambridge and you can afford it, why wouldn't you live in Cambridge? Why would you want to live someplace that is further out, that you have to travel further, that doesn't have some of the great amenities that Cambridge has? You wouldn't want to. But as we do that, we run into problems where the demand has gone up and up and up and up. And not just in Cambridge, in Boston, and in all these other areas where people are building. We're creating new jobs. We've added 25,000 new jobs in the last 5 years in the Cambridge area. We've added only about 4,000 homes to go with them. So when you increase the number of jobs by 25,000, you increase the number of homes by 4,000, you got a simple problem here, is that all those people coming here for jobs, they want to be in Cambridge. A lot of them want to be in Cambridge. Now, it's really expensive now, but they'd like to be in Cambridge. If housing was free, if all the housing was the same price everywhere, and not was free, but if housing was the same price everywhere, I think most people would choose to be close to work. Now, they have to balance that as they have couples or kids in school or whatever else like that, but being close to work is a pretty big desire. And when you have highly paid software engineers, or you have highly paid technology researchers or biotech researchers or other job roles that pay a high income, they can afford to live in Cambridge. They can afford to rent that apartment that's coming up on the market. And when they rent it for, $3,150 this year and $3,200 next year and, $3,200 to $3,500 next year, because rent goes up by 5% for a lot of people every year, you're talking about that being, just how things are going. If you look at the Boston area in general, housing prices have gone up at about a 7% rate year over year in Boston for the past 7 years. Since the recovery out of the 2008 recession, what we have seen is that housing prices in Boston have appreciated at 7% every year, which is something along the lines of 3 times the price of inflation and much higher than people's raises are going and everything else like that. So even if you could afford to live in Cambridge in 2005, in 2006, in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, it's likely that you can't afford to live here anymore. You can't afford to live here anymore. The prices have gone up. The prices have gone up and people have moved out. And we've lost diversity of our community. We've lost diversity along all kinds of axes, whether it's economic or whether it's, any kind of axis you break down on. What you are seeing is Cambridge moving to become a more homogenous city. Now, this isn't just something that happens it's not just that all of these apartments cost the same amount. The reality is that people will fight for less expensive apartments. They will. And so what we will see, or we'll fight for places closer to their place of work, is what I meant to say. People will fight for places closer to their place of work. And so what we've seen, for example, in Kendall Square. Kendall Square recently built a 280-unit apartment tower. Proto at 88 Ames Street is a new apartment tower. And what you'll see at Proto is that apartments here, remember I said that, apartments in Cambridge were $3,600 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment. Well, in Proto, there are 3-bedroom apartments, but you can't rent them. And I don't just mean because you can't afford them, I mean because they're all sold out. But if we look at the studios that rent in Proto, in Kendall Square, what we see is that the studios, which, have this layout where your kitchen and your sleeping area and living room are basically all one little area, and this is all you get. This is your whole house at 350 square feet. But these places rent for $3,000 a month. And you can see that a 1-bedroom apartment, which might have a nicer layout, you've actually got a separate room. You got the small, I don't even know where you have a kitchen here. You have a kitchen? Okay, so the kitchen and the living area here, right? So you're able to take these kitchen and living area, and these are separate spaces. You want that kind of luxury, it's $4,000 a month. Now, they do say up to $6,000 a month. That's if you get a 6-month lease. I don't know who's paying $2,000 extra a month to lease for that amount of whatever, but they are. So in total, if you look at Proto, it's a 280-unit building, and there are in total 6 apartments. There are 6 apartments available in this 280-unit building that rent for $5,000, $4,000, $3,000, $3,000 a month, whether you're talking about a 2-bedroom, a 1-bedroom, or a studio. $5,000, $4,000, $3,000. So a $3,000 studio, a $4,000 1-bedroom apartment. Now, why are people paying that? Well, they're paying that because it's right in Kendall Square. They're paying that because it is right in the heart of a place where there's a bunch of jobs. It's right in the heart of a place where there's public transit. It's right in the heart of a place where there's a bunch of restaurants, especially during the weekdays. There's a farmer's market right there. You're close to a number of bus lines that come through there. You have great access to MIT. And if you can afford it, why wouldn't you pay it? If money is not an object to you for whatever reason, and let me just be clear that for the types of people who are working at biotech and tech companies and other things like that, even for them, $4,000 a month is a lot. Even for the types of people that you say, oh, they have all the money in the world, $4,000 a month would mean that you are paying $48,000 a year for your rent alone. All right, so that is more than it would cost me to buy a new Corvette and a half every year, I think. I don't know, Corvettes are probably more expensive than the last time I looked, but you could just buy yourself a brand new sports car every year for the amount of money you're paying for rent. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. Unless money's not an object. If money's not an object, then great. You got this great building here, why not move it? Now, there are some people who think that building new buildings like this is what causes the rent to go up. That if you build new buildings, that more rich people will move in and so on and so forth. But that's not really how it works. I know that this is a common, all these luxury, blah, blah, blah. What brings people to Cambridge, what brings people to paying those prices is being close to the things that they care about, whether that's jobs or retail or the Red Line or whatever. That's what brings people to these places. What brings them is the amenities and the opportunities that make our city great. It is having the jobs here. It is being close to the Red Line. It is having good transit access. It is having a great dance party in Cambridge every year. It's having schools that people want to be in. It's having all of these things. So those 280 units, that building was finished, I think, like a year ago, all sold out effectively immediately because there's enough demand in Cambridge of just very wealthy people that they can afford to come in here and buy those. But what happens is that when those wealthy people move in, what they do is they leave the apartments that they were living in before empty, right? If you're going to move, you got to move from somewhere. I mean, if sometimes you're moving out of your parents' house, but most people making $4,000 who can afford $48,000 a year on rent are not moving out of their parents' house. Okay, so usually what happens is you're moving, and if you're moving to a $4,000 a month apartment, you're leaving most likely because there aren't a lot of places more expensive than that. You're leaving a less expensive apartment open. And when we do that a lot, when we build thousands and thousands across the Boston metro area of apartments that are less than $4,000, more than $4,000 a month. What happens is the people who can afford that move out of their lower paying apartments, lower cost apartments, and they move into the higher cost apartments. And then the people who move into those move in, and the people who move into those. And what you do is you have this musical chairs game, where as you build a new apartment, people can move in. The rich jerks come and they move in, and they can do whatever. And I'm not saying everyone who lives in Proto is a jerk. I'm just saying that everyone in Proto who lives in Proto is a jerk. But realistically, no. I mean, people move in who have money, and that's fine. And they spend their money on housing because that's what they want to spend it on. And they move into a nice place that they're, don't have to worry that the dishwasher needs replacing, or that the toilet leaks, or that, the heat doesn't really work well. They move into a nice place and they're happy with that. And what they do is they open up an apartment that maybe the dishwasher does need replacing, or where the windows don't seal as well, or where, the heat doesn't really work all that well in the winter, or anything else like that. And so they were only paying $3,500 a month before, and so great, now someone can move into their $3,500 a month apartment because it's nicer than the one that they're in. And you move all the way down the line. And what has been found is that for every 100 apartments that you make at the high end, what you're able to do is they're able to open up 60 units at the low end. The people move around with musical chairs, and they open up all of these places that are oftentimes even below the median, price for the area that become available. Now in Cambridge, we've already talked about the fact that the rent is too damn high, right? $3,500 a month for a 3-bedroom, $2,900 a month for a 2-bedroom, $2,300 to $2,400 a month for a 1-bedroom. People can't afford that. People who are making below the median income, students who have just moved on to their first job, people who are working in service roles, people who are working at Starbucks and restaurants, people who are working as Uber drivers, these people can't afford that. And so we need to make more options for that too, right? We have to make we do not just need to reshuffle all the deck chairs and have people be able to afford the bottom of the market rate rent, because there's a lot of people who live in Cambridge who will not be able to afford that. Preschool teachers and middle school teachers and high school teachers and service workers and everyone else who we depend on and see every day in order to make our lives worth living needs to have a place to live. And they need to have a place to live that's affordable to them, just like anybody else. And we don't want anybody to have to live hours and hours from their job. We don't want Uber drivers to be driving here from, Manchester, New Hampshire and coming down, as a recent driver told me that they do every day, so that they can drive around here and make money and then drive back up. We don't want to have people who are forced to live and commute hours and hours in order to get to the jobs that they can do. We want to have people who can live close to work. We want to have this for all kinds of reasons. One, it's just a quality of life issue. We want to have more homes for people to live in near work, because who wants to live 2 hours away? Who wants to deal with that? But the other thing is that it makes all of our lives better. By moving people closer to their work, we reduce the amount of traffic, we reduce the amount of impact from climate change, we reduce all kinds of different things that we really need to be working on. So what's the way you get there? Well, you build more homes. If you build more homes, even if they're expensive homes, then what happens is that more homes open up. And while it is true that no matter how many homes that we can practically build in Cambridge, most likely we are not going to be able to lower that bottom of the market very easily. There is simply too much demand right now. And so one of the other things that we need to do is that we need to provide better programs to provide assistance to renters who are here. We need to find better ways to fund things that will help people be able to live on their own. Some of that means that we need to be providing better vouchers or amount of money for people to go and find rentals. If people need help, we should be helping them. Some of that means that we need to be creating more housing that is available through our assistance programs. We have a waiting list of 20,000 people on the Cambridge Housing Authority's waiting list for homes, and that list at this point is realistically decades long. We need to be creating more housing for them too. We need to be protecting people who are already in homes and helping them not be evicted based on the whims of people who are taking out opportunities to make more money. When we look at the number of people who are evicted in this city, what we see is that most of them come from low-income housing, and most of them come because of things like noise complaints or smell complaints or other things like that. And we need to be providing more support to those people to back them up and say, you have rights here. Massachusetts is famous for having great tenant protections, but those tenant protections mean nothing if the landlord that you're talking to doesn't know that you are going to fight them on things that they're saying that aren't right. And that happens. Not to everyone, not all landlords. That sounds terrible, not all whatever. But it happens. It happens, and we need to be providing and making sure that people have access to those things, to those services. We need to be protecting people who are in their homes by helping them stay there whenever we can. And oftentimes what we found is that that's a lot cheaper than the alternative. What happens when people go out on the street is that it's much more difficult to help them. It's difficult to help them get access to the services they need. It's difficult to have them get help to the access to the housing we need. More so than anything else in life, housing forms a basis of safety and protection that we need to protect as a first order for the people who live in Cambridge and the people who want to live in Cambridge. We need to provide more homes for people to be here. Because what we've done is created Cambridge as this great city that people can come to and be happy and enjoy and work in and live in and all of these things, but we have not created more homes to match that demand. We have made the rules such that we can't do that. And we need to fix that. We need to fix that, and we need to make it possible for more people to live here. And eventually, if we do that enough, we can stop the rent from going up every month. We can stop the 7% rental increase raises. We can stop the prices from going from $2,200 to $2,300 to $2,400 to $2,700 for a one-bedroom apartment. We can stop people not being able to find an apartment when they do lose their home. Because there's just nothing out there. There's nothing out there that provides what they need. There's nothing out there that provides the spaces that they need or the bedrooms that they need. There's nothing out there that will provide them to make room for their new kid, or for a family member who wants to move in with them. We need to be doing better about that. So next week, I'm going to give you a little bit of oversight of what we can do in Cambridge to move forward on creating more homes, on creating more opportunities, on creating more paths for people to be able to take this forward and find a way to live in Cambridge, about how we can fight the environment, about how we can fight all of the things that get in the way when you don't have housing. Because we know the rent is too damn high. And we know that every year it's going higher. And we have to do our damnedest to make sure that no matter how much people want to live here, that we do our best to make sure they can get here and they can stay. I'm Chris Schmidt. This has been the first episode of Renters Matter.